Andrew Clennell is still with me. We're going to get on to a few other issues, but let's just tie this in a bow. So essentially, Coles and Woolworths misleading in their advertising. I would say, if I was playing devil's advocate here, Oreos aren't an essential product, and that's the main example today.
It's also strepsils.
It's not like sustaining
it's also
life.
Strepsils.
Strepsils, great. They're lovely and very useful. But no one's forcing consumers to buy these products.
Yeah, look, I think the public
it's
would
talking about misleading
be on the side of the ACCC here,
I think
just because
so too.
they've copped it in the neck, you know.
Yeah, I think so too. But it just underscores the issue of absolute market saturation.
Does it ever?
From Woolworths and Coles.
They can do what they want. They can do as they please. It's not about how much.
I get a bit nervous when, we take out all personal responsibility, though. You know, no one's forcing people to buy Oreos at $5.
I mean, at the moment, you go to the supermarket, you try and buy some green grapes, it's $14. You go to the pub, you try and buy 2 schooners, it's $19.20.
$19.20 for 2 schooners.
And not fancy beer either.
Really?
So you can
what
see,
was it?
well, Resh's and a VB. So, look, I mean, basically, this is where we're at. And so, you know, from the government's point of view at least, if Coles and Woolies can wear a bit of the blame, they're pretty happy, aren't they? I guess ACCC is a government agency.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, let's talk about the RBA. The RBA is going to make another decision on interest rates tomorrow. We expect them to be on hold. But what's bubbling around in the background is these RBA reforms, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
The Treasurer Jim Chalmers has been trying to force the coalition to the table here. He kind of flirted with doing a deal with the Greens, but the Greens have jumped the shark again and said, you know, what they want to legislate lower interest rates. So that's not going to happen? Well,
it's smart politically by the Greens, I reckon. But look, I'll tell you what the biggest issue in this is this week, and that's Wednesday's inflation figure. Forget the Reserve Bank meeting tomorrow, forget the Greens and their posturing. The government seems to have an expectation that we could get a monthly inflation figure in the 2s. Wow. It hasn't happened since 2021. Here was the Treasurer saying that yesterday.
Those monthly figures can be pretty volatile and unpredictable, and we've said that before. I think most economists expect that the number will be down and it will show a further welcome progress towards lower inflation in our economy. Whether it's in the low 3s or in the high 2s, we've got the same objectives as the Reserve Bank. That's why I work closely with Governor Bullock, because we're trying to get on top of inflation without ignoring the risks to growth in our economy. We've got slightly different responsibilities and from time to time we'll have slightly different perspectives, but overall we're on the same page.
OK, so Jim Chalmers had breakfast with Michelle Bullock for an hour in Sydney last Wednesday. I think they patched things up a bit, but what's going to help them patch things up is this inflation figure coming down. And you hear there, he's talking about high 2s, early 3s. It was 3.5 quarterly, it was 3.9.
Yeah, it's got to be sustainable.
Suddenly we're looking like they are in the market for a rate cut. And we will see, but it's a critical figure. I think anything above 3 isn't good news for the government on Wednesday, but if they can jag a 2.9, some in the market think it'll be 2.7. Wow. That will be finally some good news for the government. When we can see it with the news poll, they're basically on the ropes. Without a rate cut, they're losing the election.
Yeah.
That's what you can see from the trend there. Now, Jim Chalmers, he also spoke about net migration. They were trying to get it down. He's admitted it's going to be over 400,000 again. It was over 500,000 last year, so they haven't quite tackled that problem.
First of all, those net overseas migration numbers showed that net overseas migration is coming down. It has already peaked in the past and it's been coming down ever since. And so that's important. And also those numbers are from before our new migration policies kicked in on the 1st of July. They predated that. One of the factors that will be really important to that update that we release before long is the fact that fewer people are leaving. Arrivals are coming off, departures are not, and that will impact the updated figures when we release them.
OK, let's talk about Peter Dutton. A big speech for him today. He's doing it at CEDA. He's going to talk nuclear. He's going to make the case for nuclear. What is he going to say? Because he's not going to put a price tag on it, is he?
Well, from what I can see, he's going to say stuff all. I mean, he's not putting the cost on it. He's just saying it's a good idea. At least he's outselling it after announcing it and running away from it. But I don't think this is good enough. If you have a policy this big, you need to start putting some meat on the bones of it, not just come out with rhetoric. And frankly, he says, well, we're not playing to Chris Bowen and Jim Chalmers' timeline. I sympathise and understand with that. but you're playing the Australian public for mugs if you announce a policy like this and don't have the full detail out there. So Peter Dutton, he might not be operating to Jim Chalmers and Chris Bowen's timetable, and that's fair enough. But what about the actual timetable of telling the Australian public well in advance of an election? I don't think he can get away with this for much longer. So here was Jim Chalmers leaping on him yesterday and John O'Donoghue defending him.
He has gone characteristically for the most divisive option with the least details. He needs to come clean. What will it cost? What will it mean for power bills? How will he pay for it? And what will Australia do for the decades it will take to build these reactors? I think that this is economic insanity.
Government and opponents to good sound policy are going to run a scare campaign no matter what we say or do. And we'll release the costings well and truly before the election. Australians deserve to know, and we will have that data out there. But we'll continue to mount the case for having this as a choice in the energy mix at the right time.
The Communications Minister, Michelle Rowland, has also given a little bit more detail on the misinformation bill. There's been a bit of a scare campaign from the opposition here, but where is the government landing on this?
Well, I just don't think they're going to be able to get it through the Senate, ultimately, as it seems to be the problem with a lot of things. So I don't think we'll see the light of day. But look, last week I played you David Coleman saying this definition of serious harm, so many people could get caught up in this. She's had a real crack yesterday back at David Coleman saying they have on their website the opposition of policy for a misinformation bill. So are they for it or are they against it? But she also makes a comment here that only the tech companies get penalised, not individuals. And it's been pointed out to me since individuals can be penalised under this, but it's a case of if you work for a digital platform and you don't hand over information, you can cop a fine. So
the individual.
Yeah, that's right. But they don't. The person speaking misinformation won't cop a penalty under this. Have a listen to Michelle Rowland.
The coalition can't have it both ways. They've got on their public website at the moment a commitment to introduce legislation to tackle harmful mis and disinformation. And at the same time, they're going out there saying basically that they don't support this. As this has been developed, this has been done in a way that corresponds with our international obligations, recognises the fact that harmful mis and disinformation is actually having an impact on not only Australian democracy, but on the safety of Australians.
What might be the penalty for an individual?
Individuals aren't being fined.
Okay,
this is a matter that goes to the conduct of the platforms and their systems and processes.
Yeah, right. It's an important reform. It's really difficult, as is proving gambling advertising.
Yeah, well, we've been waiting a while for this now, haven't we? So what's the hold-up? Because it's not like they put a bill forward. Well, the hold-up is a lot of lobbying behind the scenes from television networks, from people who are involved in the sports industry and racing industry, because I can see some things going under if the wrong thing is landed on. So here are the points of contention. The government wants betting ads banned an hour before a game into an hour after.
Okay.
The industry wants half an hour before a game till the end of the game. The government, and other times, wants a cap of 2 ads an hour. The industry wants 3 ads an hour. The government wants a total ban on digital advertising in relation to betting, and the industry wants something of a ban or a cap, but not a full ban. So that's what we're looking at. And the minister did say the PM's heavily involved in this with talks with, people like Peter V'landys, I imagine, from Racing New South Wales and the NRL, and with sport. So where are we going to end up? Well, the industry compromise doesn't sound that bad. At least it's doing something reasonably substantial. I don't think there's a lot of ground between the two parties here, so hopefully we see something soon. Here's the Communications Minister.
Well, we're consulting on a range of matters at the moment, and I've seen speculation from different sources on that. But I should be clear, Andrew, that the key issue here is threefold. We want to ensure that we protect children. We want to break the nexus between wagering and sport. And we want to deal with the saturation of ads, particularly as that impacts on young men aged around 18 to 35. I know that many of your viewers will be thinking the same as they get excited about the final season. We want people to be excited about the game, not about the odds.
All right, let me quickly ask you about news polls. Poll after poll after poll at the moment. People are getting really excited. News poll hasn't really moved all that much, but it's part of a broader trend. The rise of the double haters, we've seen that right around the world. I was in the UK. We saw that in those election results. People are turning away from both major parties. It's happening here in Australia as well. But speaking to Allegra Spender, she says, we're not going to entertain that. We want to, we'll do what we can. We'll deal with the parliament as it falls. But what do you see, Andrew, as the most likely outcome for this election now?
Well, I think they will get rate cuts. I think Labor's suffered enough through the cost of living crisis the last couple of years that only takes them to about 70 to 72 seats anyway. So a very, very messy parliament. And I think the really dangerous number in this news poll is 31 Labor. I mean, it's really, really low primary. I know they won with 32.5, but 31, if it goes lower, if they don't get a rate cut soon, it's going to go lower. People have had it. They've had it. So businesses are starting to shut. Unemployment will start to edge up. I was talking to someone the other day who reckoned a few weeks ago you put in a job ad you get about 2 people applying. Now he's seeing more than 100 applying. Things are starting to edge. You just hear anecdotally. Yeah. They've really this sort of high rate environment, high inflation environment for so long. And I've heard you point out in the program before. The thing about inflation is, okay, so Jim Chalmers might get 2.7 this week as a monthly figure, and it might
it's a new bottom line. That bottom line never goes down.
It's a new bottom line. So we've gone all this way. And that's great. Now your schooners are only $19.20 till the end of time.
So when we talk about getting inflation under control, it doesn't mean prices are coming down. No. It's mean that they're not going up anymore. That's right.
Stabilising, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So the damage has been done. And it has been a hard time for incumbents around the world. These guys would be out on their ear, except it's only their first term. And the other issue is I really do think there's a massive gender divide here. So interesting to hear David Littleproud talk about the beer tax, because the men voted Scott Morrison in last time and the women voted Anthony Albanese in. So Dutton, I still think he has to turn some of that female vote around, but I think people are starting to get fed up with Anthony Albanese, and it's a real concern for him going forward. If they keep going the way they're going, if they don't get a couple of rate cuts, they're in all manner of trouble. They need 2 things, a rate cut and a clearer communication strategy.
Yeah.
And a narrative.
Maybe something a little bit bold.
Maybe some policy. Some boldness. Yeah. So sometimes when you're just trying to block the ball out, you get bold, You've got to spread the field and play a few shots. But, maybe they've got some plan close to the election. We'll see. Haven't seen much of it at the moment.
No, we haven't. Andrew, good to talk to you.